Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining the webinar on neuroscience, business, and project management profession, sponsored by PM Powered, the company that is fueling management excellence. Please take the opportunity to visit our website at www.pmpowered.com. Today's webinar has three panel members, including Ms. Brand, Dr. McCoy, and Ms. Ricci. I am Wanda Curley, and I will be your moderator for today. So without further ado, let's start the webinar. So my panel guests, please provide some of the background that you currently do. So Dr. McCoy and Ms. Brand, I would also like you to discuss the neuroscience part and how you may have gotten involved in neuroscience. But let's start with Ms. Ricci first.
Hi, I'm Terry Ricci. Through a lot of years of project management, program management, volunteer with PMI, I've had the opportunity to have incredible leaders that help me hone my skills in being able to follow my passion, and that's working with organizations, building PMOs and portfolio management. So that's where I'm currently living right now, in being able to work for IAG Consulting and work with organizations to better their business as far as their models for project and portfolio management or program PMOs such. So that's what I'm doing today, because I've been spoiled rotten by great leaders to get me where I am. So I'm doing great with this.
Thank you, Terry, Ms. Ricci. Dr. McCoy, how about you?
Yes, I am a professional involved in the development of new products and technology, so research and development. I'm currently Director of Technology at PolyOne. PolyOne is a manufacturer of specialty plastic for a variety of applications, which includes food packaging, transportation, and other medical, and so on. I am also a certified coach from ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. I'm a contributing writer, some of my articles to a range of magazines, Business Standards, Cranes, and so forth. I have a great deal of passion for organization and people. The very first manager that I had actually used to remind all of us that we are not managing projects, but we are managing people and we are developing organization. So that's really stuck on me throughout my career. I first became interested in the area of neuroscience while I was preparing for my certification as a coach. That's when really I began to really beginning to understand that actually there is a brain component there. It's not just psychology, but actually some of those neuroscience can provide a great deal of insight. So I'm here today. I'm excited. I look forward to a good conversation and learning from each one of you.
Thank you, Dr. McCoy. Mrs. Brand, how about yourself?
I first became interested in neuroscience when I was 15 years old. So I was planning to go off to medical school, and I just started reading books. And I remember reading Roger Penrose's book at the time, which was sort of wrestling with what the mind really was. And it took me off into quantum physics and then back into neuroscience. And this was 18 years ago. So the field was just some of the insights that were practical rather than just clinical were just emerging. Then I went to medical school, and a lot of things obviously linked to the brain, so continued to be interested in it. Came out of medical school and trained as a coach, and all of my questions around how people could work better or how we worked in general, I was going back to what I knew from neuroscience and then looking at more research that was coming out there. So since then have written 3 books that apply the insights of neuroscience into organizations and to help coaches. And that's where I spend most of my days, with organizations, applying these insights or back in the playground with the neuroscientists and behavioral scientists, looking at what these exciting insights are telling us next.
Excellent, thank you. I also am very interested in neuroscience from an academic and a practitioner perspective. Mrs. Ricci and I go back quite a ways in doing volunteer activities, and I became very interested in neuroscience from an academic perspective first, but now I'm more interested in it from a business perspective and how it can really happen in project management and help those in the project management profession. So, Dr. Mukwa, you recently wrote an article on neuroscience and business. What prompted you to write that article?
Well, actually, I have a passion for just organization development and people. And I believe that one of our roles as leaders is really to develop people and organization, which means that we have to engage with this new field. The ability to create a context for change. That's what I think really our role as a leader is all about. So coaching, management, leadership, all of that, I think it's about creating a context for change. Now, neuroscience, represent, I thought at the time anyway, and as I was learning through my own education, that neuroscience really is an opportunity for business leaders to learn and pursue sound scientific methods to prove, to understand how the brain works and then how they could influence the organization. Now, in the past 2 decades, I mean, there has been a tremendous progress, and I think today perhaps we have a more accurate view of human nature and behavior because of the integration of two things. On one hand, we have psychology, which is the study of the human mind and human behavior, but then we also have neuroscience, which is the study of the anatomy and physiology of the brain. So I think today people are using a number of techniques, whether it's fMRI and others, really that have been enabled us really to understand how our brain works. Number of implications for this research, I think they are certainly relevant today for organizational leaders. Today, it's clear that human behavior in the workplace does not work, the way many executives think it does. But certainly, it helps us explain difficulty in organizational change initiatives, and it also has implication on coaching and employees and life learning. So that's what prompted me. I just thought I would bring that to the attention of leaders and managers out there.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have found that I've led numerous programs through organizational change, and the leaders, the senior leaders, many times forget that you're bringing these two disparate organizations together and they just expect the people to get along. And lo and behold, they don't because they come from two different cultures. So I think it's very important that neuroscience be studied by our senior leaders and executives. So Mrs. Ricci, how would you relate this to some of your experiences in dealing with organizations and senior managers, specifically in establishing project management offices or portfolio frameworks?
Well, we all know how important teamwork is when it comes to project or portfolio management, all of it. I mean, it's all about project teams and leaders. It's usually because we're implementing some form of change in an organization. So the quicker the leaders understand what drives people, what motivates people, how you best work with them, the better off the success of the project or portfolio or business model, if you will. At this level, I'm at the business model. So when it comes to that, setting up your business and structure and knowing the environment and everything that they're working within and the challenges and how to address them puts them in a better position to be successful. It really does. I mean, the whole time, at the end of the day, it's often, it comes down to you're leading people, just like you said. You're leading people, and if you don't understand what drives and motivates them, it's going to be a harder challenge in making anything happen. I've often said that if an organization focuses on their people, the results will follow.
I totally agree. Mrs. Brand, do you have anything to add about organizations neuroscience?
We don't see any barriers. So sometimes I'm asked whether senior leaders feel comfortable exploring the brain, and most of them will hands up say, yep, we recognize that most, if not all of our people have got a brain. Therefore, it makes sense. Normally there's some joking, but normally it makes sense to understand more about how it works. We wouldn't expect to improve how my laptop works. I wouldn't be able to make this work any better because I've got no idea what's going on inside. I imagine there's some wires. I don't even know how to get into the thing. But if I did get in, I'd have no idea of how to make it better. And the brain drives everything, and we do know so much more now than we did 20 years ago, and we're constantly learning more. But I just think we haven't caught up, and I do think that a lot of leaders, a lot of people are being taught outdated stuff that we just know is not the case anymore. And we know that there's a better way based on our understanding of humans. And I think organizations will dramatically change as a result of this knowledge.
Yeah, I think for the last 20 some years, neuroscience was probably in its infancy as far as business was concerned. Now we're kind of into the toddler stage. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 20 years with neuroscience and how it's brought into the business aspect. So Mrs. Brand, you actually have a website on neuroscience with articles and interesting facts. Please tell the audience what urged you to create this site. What would you encourage the listeners to do when they access your site, and how do they access the site?
Well, I think everything's been organic for us. So initially having conversations with leaders in organizations about 10 years ago, the questions were, well, where do we go for information? And that's when I first wrote the book Make Your Brain Work, a very basic book, sort of using characters and sort of everyday scenarios to try and share some of these great neuroscientific studies, but in a really accessible way. And then we created a website, obviously, with resources, with interviews with great neuroscientists who were just really happy that their research is being applied in other realms. So when I wrote that book about 5 years ago, a lot of the neuroscientists whose work I included, they were very excited. Oh wow, you're using this in business? That's cool. So a really friendly bunch, most neuroscientists, which is really lovely. And then the other books have all got websites that give free resources, because the intention is to transform organizations, is to get them more inspired and aligned with how we actually work, because ultimately it's a bit soppy, but we believe that people will be happier and better off if people understand how people work and can create organizations where people can flourish more and do their best work. And we've got a great team that help us write articles that are shared around the world now. Yeah, again, with the intention of raising the awareness and the excitement. The one caveat I'd encourage people to be wary of is that it's very easy to grab something that's out there in the popular domain, that's been chunked up a lot, but it may not actually have firm neuroscientific underpinnings. It may still be useful, but let's just identify whether that is something that's got solid neuroscientific underpinnings, or whether it's something different. So not saying there's anything wrong with different, just good to be clean, I guess, when we're using, if we're saying something's neuroscience, then let's be clear whether it really is or not. And some of the things that marketers would love, you can't shoehorn neuroscience necessarily into something that makes a great bite-size quote from a marketing perspective.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Many times I see where academic research is brought into business and it's taken out of context, and that can be very dangerous, or it can be helpful, depending on the situation. So I totally agree with you. So Dr. Mukwa, neuroscience is making strides into the business world, probably faster or slower than some would like. But if you had a crystal ball, how do you see neuroscience changing the business environment, or will it?
Yeah, yeah, certainly. Although I don't have a crystal ball, but think for a moment. I mean, when you look at changes that has happened in the business world, the number of companies that we took for granted, they're no longer there. So as we're moving forward, there is increasing competition. You have globalization. You have technological changes. You have financial upheaval, political uncertainty. Changing our workforce, demographic, and so many factors today are probably forcing organizations to change faster and differently than ever before. So clearly, new insight is needed into how organizations can better adapt themselves to those environmental changes. So really, an overriding reason, I think, is our inability to engage people. I think that's what has come down to when we look at some of those things that have happened over the past decade or so. Now, there is one behavioral expert by the name of Kenneth Thompson, and he said 20 years ago almost that this was in reaction to organizational changes. He said that organizational changes can be so excessive and immediate that some researchers have suggested it may be easier to start a completely new organization than to try to change an existing one. So think about it. So we are dealing here with the human resistance to change, and this is possibly the most important issue, I think, facing the field of organizational change. Yeah? So the question we have in front of us is, how do we effectively engage the support and creativity of a company, of company employees at the moment where these attributes are the most needed, which is mainly during an organizational changes. So what I would like to submit is that perhaps we need to think about change differently. First of all, we need to think about the people differently, not to think about people as a commodity anymore that you can hurry and push around, but really to think of people as sources of a real and powerful competitive advantage. The second thing I would like to submit is that perhaps to look at change differently, not just as perpetual crisis, but more so as an opportunity to be better prepared, better equipped to manage organization, shake-ups as a part of doing business, and to see it as an opportunity to personally develop and grow. So I think for many years, the training field, for example, has viewed organizational change as a process that is linear and sequential. That I think perhaps the change has revealed itself to us to be non-linear and chaotic, and I think that calls for a new model. I think one perhaps that would incorporate insight from neuroscience research, and then take into account some of those changes that we will experience this century or the next century.
I totally agree. I hear from professionals all over the place that the millennials are just turning organizations up on its head. And I'm thinking to myself, I've worked with millennials, I've led millennials, and yes, they have a totally different dynamic, but I don't know that they're turning organizations up on their heads. I think when I joined organization and we were considered to be rebellious because I'm a flower child from the 60s and 70s. And we came in and we started saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, I'm not doing this. But we slowly ended up going into what the model needed to be. So I think we need to study how technology is changing the brain, because I do think it is, because kids now rather talk on their cell phones than person to person, which I find odd. But anyway, so let's get back to the neuroscience area. And I think millennials will be driving a new field of neuroscience, so to speak. So Mrs. Ricci, as a senior project program portfolio management office organizational person and portfolio manager, how would you help executives and organizational leads become more open to how neuroscience can help with soft skills such as leadership, conflict resolution, et cetera? And I understand you're not an expert in neuroscience, none of us are, but just from what you've heard today, what do you think will happen?
I mean, I'm a strong advocate of lead by example. When it comes to anything new, it's education, it's training, it's being aware of what's out there that can benefit and help you get the end results that you're looking for. Project management is a form of change. Change is always with people. So whether I'm building a PMO, whether I'm developing the business portfolio model and creating that, there's organizational change. If there's an opportunity for a successful leader, most successful leaders, I try to believe, is that they're very forward thinking and they look for opportunities to be able to learn more to get the best results from not only the product. I mean, it comes down to it, you can have the best products, you can have the best performance, but if you're not leading your people and not understanding how to drive them to sustain it, you're going to end up not having the opportunity to make the benefits that you were planning to do. So when leading people through just about anything, a successful organization has to have great leaders who will be in touch with what does it take to drive the people, and not only drive the people, but motivate them enough to sustain it long term. So it's training, and it's continually sharing the knowledge that we have. The more successful information that's out on the internet, which is an easy place to get all the information you're looking for, and studies, leaders, great leaders, successful leaders, are going to be in touch with what's out there and always be trying new things if it's been proven. So that's the way I like to think, is the more we keep talking about it, we train people, we bring it to the table to where we show the results, and they all know impact and the challenge of changing people, because by default, we want to go back to what's norm. So it may do a short change, but what's the sustainable change at the end of the day? And if this can contribute to long-term success, why wouldn't they jump on board?
I totally agree with you, but we all know how resistant organizations tend to be to change. So I think it'll come, but it'll probably be slow in coming.
Yes. But it's important that they look at making it a consistent, and I mean, I know when I'm developing the model that they will be changing their business to, whether it's a informal PMO or they're formalizing a portfolio office, it's a whole change, and the people and the environment is a piece of what you have to make sure. It's not just taken for granted, oh, I'll put this in place and the people will do it. No, it has to be a set plan, understand what the environment is, understand what the drivers are, and understand, how do I get everybody there and how long is it going to take me? It's a major piece of, in project management, change in control is a huge piece of it. So whether it's a project or an organization, you still have to think about those contributing factors.
Absolutely. A big part of it is transparency as well. We don't want to keep hidden things from the people, because they will find out, whether it's through the grapevine or officially, and then they're surprised. Whereas if you had told them at the beginning, it would have been much better. Mrs. Brand, today there are wearable MRIs, or so industry tells us, and neuroscientists have the ability to see how the brain is functioning while a person is working, which to me is exciting. Do you ever envision employees having wearable MRIs in the workplace?
From a visionary perspective, absolutely. I'm not sure where the technology is at. I know there's some controversy around the mechanism that sits behind these wearable devices, and I don't know that the research that's generated from them yet would be, from a neuroscientist perspective, of an equal quality to our bigger MRIs that are very expensive, obviously, to run. And although there are some things that are adapted, for example, we can have pianos, people playing, like jazz musicians playing piano while in MRIs, and other studies have been done where people can do real-time exercises to gather data. In the future, absolutely, I do think that we will continue to develop amazing technology that will enable us to look at what's going on in the brain and give us data on that. How we use that data is a whole other question, but I do see organizations being far more equipped to respond to what's going on in people's brains and bodies. I think technology has helped us in many ways up until this point, and I think with wise usage in the future, that it's hugely exciting to be able to see more of what's going on in people's brains as they do things.
I think it's going to be an exciting field if it ever comes to a true wearable MRI. So Dr. McCoy, what are your thoughts about employees having a wearable MRI while working? Do you envision the human resource community using the information?
Yeah. I will continue on what Ms. Brown just mentioned here. In fact, I think maybe that technology is already here. As I say, the future is here already. So there are a number of portable technology out there, that will allow us to measure brain activity in a way similar to how fMRI works. And I'll give a couple of examples, but just think a moment, if that is true, if that is the case, which some of those vendors are claiming, this will forever change the world of psychology, because it will give people now a detailed information that can be used to determine appropriate intervention. Now, that may raise some moral and ethical issues, perhaps, but that's going to open up a number of things there. Now, one company that is claiming that they have such a technology is a company by the name of Open Water. I think they even have a TED video there. So their goal was to create a wearable that will enable people to see the inner workings of the body and the brain at a fairly high resolution. Now, they're not using, magnetic resonance imaging per se, but they're using somewhat of a different technology, somewhat of unconventional approach, with which they claimed will leapfrog MRI technology. What they're using, they're focusing infrared light to scan the brain bit by bit or voxel by voxel. And then that this is enabled by LCDs with pixels and so on, and they can see that image that allow them to monitor, and then one can have this intervention. So if that's the case, then this technology certainly will allow the continuous scanning of the body and the brain maybe in the form of a true wearable, the size of ski hat or bandage that you could put there. There is another company by the name of Think, THYNC. I think they are claiming that they also have some wearable there that enable people to shift the state of mind. So the company can use neurosignaling algorithm, some waveform, that will signal neural pathway to shift and optimize people's state of mind relate to energy. So you can tap into there, raise their level of energy perhaps for a limited period of time. So it's slowly coming there. It's not the mainstream yet. Now, to your earlier question, whether we can envision a company using this, I suppose we could, but I think it's going to raise an ethical issue. Could you, for example, tap into your employee brain to lead them to have an ethical behavior, for example? If it's used for good, that's great. But if it's not, then I think we're in trouble. But the technology is evolving and slowly is creeping out there.
I know I have read about some studies that DARPA, which is a think tank and research and development group by the government here in the United States, where they're trying to find something that soldiers and sailors can wear, and it would monitor them in battlefields. So if somebody is hurt in the battlefield, it would send information back saying, hey, their vital signs are going up, they're going down, or there appears to be a bullet wound, etc. And I can see where it would be helping some soldiers and sailors with PTSD issues and our returning veterans as well. So that would be an area that would be, it's near and dear to my heart because all three of my children are in the military. So going on that, Mrs. Ricci, neuroscientists, I have read several studies by neuroscientists where they conclude, as much as you can conclude in neuroscience, that our brains are wired for sequential tasks, not for multitasking. Multitasking is inefficient for our brains. However, those in project management offices and running a portfolio are forced to multitask. Do you envision a time when project management associations, such as the Project Management Institute, might include neuroscience findings and standards to slowly change the way we implement a project or a program or organizations, portfolios, etc.?
I truly see the value in this when it comes to the stakeholder management, like I was alluding to earlier. It is a key part of what we do in the project management world, whether it's portfolio, program, PMOs, it's managing people. So putting more information and more knowledge in the hands of the people who drive this and own it is going to be phenomenal. So yes, I would absolutely love to see this being more of a focus, and that the project management associations take this into more of a forefront, because that is ultimately the success. A product can go through any machinery, but it's driving the people to do it is what really is the core piece, and managing the tasks and all that. Now, when it comes to the ability to alter somebody's thinking, I just wish we can get to that point really soon, because it would make my life and all project managers' lives absolutely easier. But realistically, the way I'm feeling, I don't believe it's going to be anytime soon that we can take away the multitasking and the sequential planning. I mean, at the end of the day, that's our DNA, and that's what we do. I can't, as much as it would be so much better for all project management or leaders, that when we're doing a deliverable that has sequential it has parallel activities, or it's multitasking, because we have so many different streams that we have to manage. I don't see it's going to happen anytime soon in my lifetime, as much as I'd love to have it, because that's our DNA and that's what makes us unique. Because for some reason, I think our brains are worked a little bit differently, And that's what we do, and we can take it apart. Although it's a dream come true to have it taking that stress level off of us, I would like to see it happen sooner than later, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon for us to really benefit today.
Go ahead, Mrs.
Tell me yes.
I don't know about your specific industry, but I know other industries that traditionally have been priding themselves on their ability to multitask are seeking the insights. We've worked with several large companies around the world to share the information and perhaps some of the practices, and looking at how we can actually change even their software and their setup, their environmental setup, to make it start conditioning people into monotasking, because the research says it's going to deliver better results, it's going to increase productivity. So there are organizations that are making that leap of faith almost based on the research. So you never know, it might be sooner.
I'm totally excited and welcoming it. I absolutely am. But when we did, because I came from a manufacturing world as well, so when the project and we set up the PMO or the portfolio, whatever we do, we're doing the setup initially. When we get it all set up and we're handing it off to the operational, or handing it off to the business, that's exactly where we have to take it and put it into sequential order. We have to make it life easy for them. We have to make it the ultimate performance. So when doing that, it's almost like, yes, in the perfect world, we hand that off. But unfortunately, up front, if there's anything that you've got where we can actually apply it to when we're developing the model, that's what we do. We develop and implement it so that the rest of it does sound and easy to maintain. That it is sequential versus multitasking. We try to take all that out of it. But right now, today, if you have something that allows us to take something from a concept and put it into production where it is easy to use, and take away the multitasking and put it into that structure, that would be a dream come true for us, because we're doing the part where we have to think all that out and get it into there. So that's where right now, if there was a way that we can get this into any project management, all project management associations, when it comes to managing the people, absolutely, we need it now. We've got enough information that they should know about it now. And if they don't, get on board, because it's a great value. But the multitasking sequential, I need it sooner than later. It'll make my world so much better.
So Dr. McCoy, you have anything to say about it? You indicated you have worked on projects in the past and led some.
Yeah. I was just, I mean, I've read that multitasking is making people less productive. I mean, that's it's almost a common sense in a way, because people do need to have that time where they could be focused, where they could focus and internalize ideas. But I could certainly imagine that every now and then you need to come out of that that box, if you will, interact with a number of activities, and then go back. So perhaps it's a combination of those activities for the individuals. So allowing for time where you're focused, one task, you can move it forward, and then having that time where you can have, for lack of a better word, distraction with multiple activities. You almost have to go in and out of that. But I'll certainly be interested in seeing research people are doing in the area of multitasking, and productivity. That's one I'm following.
Mrs. Ricci, you have something more to add?
I'd love to work more with you on this, because right now the big part of what I do at IAG and our clients is one of the biggest challenges, just taking prioritization. And it's at the executive level. It's not just necessarily the project level. It's taking their business portfolio of projects and prioritizing. Something as simple as prioritizing, because we've got the project teams working on projects, and they're multitasking on multiple projects at the same time, but not really understanding the prioritization and what they should be. So we are actually taking it and putting it through a prioritization and helping them make sense of their business so that they can be working in focused groups on, we're all working on this, we understand the alignment, so we take away all of that ambiguity about which one am I working for, and it's the stress of too much coming at them too soon. So we're trying to do that. I would love to stay in contact and hear more about some of the things that are coming forward that we can help upfront where we need it most.
Well, Mrs. Brand, you and Mrs. Ricci and Dr. McCoy have an opportunity for research here, it sounds like to me. So on this, continuing with the multitasking and the sequential, Dr. Mukwa, most companies put their employees in cubicles. I had to work in what I call cubicle land, and I know I would get distracted very easily because you hear somebody on the phone say, oh, I'm going to order lunch, and all of a sudden you think, wow, I'm hungry, and your focus is taken away from what you're doing. So studies have shown that it is inefficient, again, for employees to be forced to multitask through distractions. Do you see senior management and the HR community creating single offices or at least mini rooms for employees?
Well, let's go back in time. I think when we started the idea of a cubicle, it was really because we wanted to provide workers, if you will, employees, an office without relying on heavy construction. So that was the idea. So then, as time went on, company began to shed real estate costs. So we're beginning to provide people less space to work, trying to cram as many people into one space. So that's where we went. For example, if you look at the statistics, just think for a moment, in 1992, we were providing about 80 square feet of space. Today is less than 30 square feet. So we try to cram as many people as we can.
Right.
So and then when we had the crisis of 2008, that did not help. But then there are actually a number of things that's also happening. So you have cramming people, but then you also have the influx of mobile technology. All of that also beginning to change the workplace landscape, literally. So the question is that, do the cubicles still make sense? So that's really what we should ask. We all have a sense that it's very destructive and so on. When I worked for SC Johnson years ago, we were all in cubes. Some of us managers, we had a bigger cube, other people had a smaller cube. And then what they did there, we had a small gadget in each one of those cubes where you can it can generate some background sound or noise that will dampen any types of noise. It was so well done that you could be on the phone and the fellow in the next cube would not be able to fully distinguish exactly what your conversation is all about on the phone. They will just hear you murmuring and so on. So there are some techniques, but nevertheless, today, because we are cramming people, just become just a great deal of distraction, and it's making it somewhat difficult. Now, do the cubicles still make sense? So today we have flat screen that's replacing those heavy monitors. We have iPhone. So some of the managers actually are saying that cubicle perhaps no longer makes sense for workers, because they don't need to be always at their desk. So an employee, particularly the millennial tech-savvy generation, they have embraced the idea of working remotely and from different spots in the office. So that's how it is. So while cubicle farms may be out, I think open share space probably are coming in.
Right.
So that's what that's what I see here. I read some time ago that Intel Corporation they have created more conference and meeting rooms where employees can collaborate. They're also going wireless. They claim that 30% of their employees in this renovated space don't have assigned cubicle and so on. So that's one thing. Now, in North Carolina, a few years ago, SAS, they were ranked as the best place to work for. And one of the reasons is because they were providing an office space to every single employee. So what to make out of it? I think the cubes are out, and this share space, are coming in. That's what we're seeing here.
Silicon Valley has really embraced that. They have shared areas and then huddle spaces, they call them. And they've taken water cooler breaks to a whole new level by having foosballs and life-size Jengas, etc. But Mrs. Brand, you seem to want to say something here, so tell us.
We encourage organizations to take a different approach in terms of identifying what the best environment is. So rather than following the trends, which is, many conferences are built on sharing case studies, but the actual background and the rationale behind something may or may not be appropriate for a different organization. Right. We've got a very simple model. It's called the beautifully simple model that gets results. Essentially, we ask organizations to focus on the results that they're looking for first, then think about the behaviors that are needed to generate those results, and then think about the environment that's likely to nudge those behaviors and create those results. So for some situations, it may be that pods are great, but in many organizations, it's not the ideal for the behaviors and the results that we're looking for. The added piece that we throw in is the internal environment. So when we're thinking about the behaviors that organizations are wanting to generate, often we're brought in because organizations want people to be better problem solvers, more innovative, more competitive, but they've got them sat in these cubicles, just looking at the same space, and they're wanting them to activate the creative areas of their brain, generative thinking. They're not going to get bottom-up generative thinking in all likelihood if they're sat in exactly the same position as they always are. So a lot of our work with organizations is about designing these environments that will get the best behaviors and results that they're looking for. And I was in China the end of last year, and in the audience of this public lecture I was giving, linked to this topic, was a senior guy from PwC, and he said, "We've just changed everything to have lots of open plan spaces. You're going to tell me that's a bad idea, aren't you?" And for what he wanted from his people, it probably wasn't the best plan. But there are ways of cushioning against. So sometimes organizations are open, like Warner Brothers, to if they're redoing everything, to actually having input from behavioral scientists and neuroscientists to think about, what do you actually want going on in people's brains, therefore what kind of environment is going to support that. And sometimes companies will just get the interior decorators in.
There you go. So Mrs. Brand, if people wanted to know more about your beautifully simple model, where would they go to find out more about the model?
We explain it in the Engaged book. We may have some blogs on it on the Engaged Brains website, or otherwise can email us. We frequently give talks around the world where we unpack it.
Okay. Thank you. What email address should they use?
You can reach me directly, amy@synapticpotential.com.
Thank you. Mrs. Ricci, do you think you would be a better leader if you had a private office where you could do away with the distractions?
Absolutely. Because our world is all about conference calling, because you're pulling people together, just like we're here on this webinar. We run project teams. So whether you're in a conference call for a specific project, or you're working with different business units because you're building their whole portfolio or their PMO, you're working in teams. So business, like was mentioned earlier, having for our business and our needs, having more conference rooms is more important. Remote is absolutely perfect because you can do conference calls all day and you're not sitting there with a headset on trying to talk. You can actually have the comfort and focus on what you need to do. Technology is great. We just need a laptop. We need silence, because when we're thinking and we're doing detailed work, distractions are not the best environment for us. So yeah, absolutely. Previously in the workplace today, there's budgets, there's costs. So I think if we still can look at, I'm the type of person who looks at and having the always, what can I take out of it? If I can't change everything, what can I take and make it as a value? I know that the workspace isn't the best place, but I also have to remember that I've got people on the other side of the phone, and it's harder to manage them. It's harder to feel them. It's harder to know how they're feeling that day, let alone how their response is working because you can't see them. So taking what everyone is saying and having that intuition of knowledge to say, I need to be able to make sure, first of all, that my mood is under control and what my environment is to me, that I'm not influencing the rest of the team that's on the phone when I can't see or react to them. So you got to do both things, and having this knowledge is one of the key trainings for project managers when we're leading people, is to always make sure you're the one in control first, make sure your mood is not impacting the team, but knowing how to do that soundboard when you're in a cubicle versus a meeting room, it's harder. So it's easier for them to have meeting rooms and work remote where they can actually use technology like here and be able to have the silence and focus. So yeah, I'm a big that.
Great. So, Mrs. Brand, what are your plans for the future of your website and dealing with neuroscience?
What a big question. We want to continue working with organizations. I think there's a big movement to utilize neuroscientific insights, and our vision is to be credible. So everything that we do is well researched, well underpinned, and we want to continue those trends and relationships so that we're equipping people with reliable insights that they can use in their organizations. We'll continue to share as much information as we can publicly and for free so that people of varying budgets can access this kind of information, and hopefully develop more of these great case studies that are showing the organizations, whatever stage they're at, whether they're a very young startup that are all hip and, or whether they are a very established, much older business that are looking to make changes, that believe maybe it's going to be really tricky, actually showing that this change, this development's possible, hopefully inspires other companies so that the future holds organizations that people love to work for. I just think it would be an amazing world if people were waking up on Monday mornings feeling excited and getting to their Friday afternoons and feeling fulfilled. I think that's the vision.
Great, excellent. I know I have found a lot of good information on your website. So Dr. McCoy, will you be writing any more articles on neuroscience, and how will you use the data?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, once I have a moment of inspiration, I'll certainly try to take advantage of that. But certainly there is one area that I mentioned earlier when I introduced myself, that I am a certified coach from the International Coaching Federation. And throughout my career for the past perhaps 10 years or so, I've been involved. I take it as voluntary here, just coaching many of the employees here, just for them to, in whatever area they choose, coaching them and so on. But really what I'm trying to coach them is trying to look at the aspect where they can beginning to cultivate a moment of insight, which is something that I've learned, but I'm trying to learn more and in that area. Because I mean, the brain, when you look at it, when you tell the brain to do something, it automatically push back. But it does reflect that the fact that the brains are pattern-making organs, with really a desire to create new connections, really. So when people solve problems by themselves, which is what I attempt to do during my coaching session for many of the employees here, then we know that from neuroscience that the brain will release a rush of neurotransmitters. So that's really what's happening. So what are the implications? So this obviously provides scientific basis for, I believe, for some of the practices of leadership coaching. Rather than lecturing people or providing them solutions, effective coaches will ask pertinent questions, open-ended question, and then helping the individual in working out solution on their own. So this is one area that I've been exploring because a few years ago we tried to do a kind of large-scale behavior change, so trying to see whether we can actually have a large-scale change in mental maps. So we try to see is there any types of event or experience that would allow people to provoke themselves, to change the attitude and expectation. So this is one area that I'm still reading a lot and trying to see if there are some insight there. But I could see the idea of trying to cultivate moments of insight, having employee discover their own solution. It's been a very powerful one in terms of seeing the results, whether behavioral change or people achieving certain objectives, personal or professional.
Thank you. Mrs. Ricci, you've heard a lot on neuroscience today. Do you believe it will change the organizational landscapes? And if so, how?
I am really hoping it will, because I'm a strong advocate of great leaders, and understanding people is what drives everything. So I would really hope so. I mean, it doesn't just talk about leaders, it talks about individuals, and it gives you the insight to, like you just alluded to, a personal change. You can't make people do something. All you can do is influence them, and when they decide that they want to make it happen, they can do it. So can this do anything positive? Absolutely. Is it going to be the foundation in the future on understanding what drives people, so that an individual can grow from being a project manager into excelling as a thought leader? It could take it as PMO and portfolio leaders can influence and change the productivity levels and the performance of an organization. I'm passionate about being part of successful leaders and developing and growing successful leaders, not just managing people. It's not about that. It's about giving them the tools and the techniques and learnings, the understanding, and making sure that at everything, it's always about people at the end of the day. Yeah, so yes, yeah. I'm really hoping that it does keep continuing. The more information that wonderful research brings to us, we can actually start to apply and use and start seeing the differences.
Great.
Yeah. And in fact, if I may just add,
sure.
Professor Curley here, is just to continue on what is being said here. I mean, neuroscience obviously doesn't provide all the answers, but I think it certainly offers insight on how effective learning and development program can be tailored in order to develop effective organization. It provides insight on how to engage people and organizational changes. I mean, business leaders certainly they should follow and learn from this new science. Forward-thinking leaders probably should use the latest neuroscience findings and then apply them to how individual teams and organizations develop. So that's really what my motivation is, and I gather from the other participants, it's also theirs.
But that's why we were saying earlier, the same question, why it's so important for the project management associations to incorporate this, because we do that change. We're the ones that are brought in to do the change. If it's an organizational change, whether it's implementing a product, whether it's setting up structure of new PMOs or portfolio offices, we are integrating people with tools, with services, with products. We bring that in. And if we don't know, and we don't continue bringing this wonderful knowledge to the table, that we can put more trained people on how and what it takes to drive the end results for sustainability, where will we be if we don't really listen to what's out there and all the wonderful learnings that everybody who does research like you do brings to us that we can actually benefit from?
So
absolutely. And in fact, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, obviously, management of people, it's not only a science. Huh? I mean, in reality, it's a science and art. And in fact, there is a great deal of art and craft in it. But I think there are several insights from neuroscience that will help us become better managers. And this actually makes the art and craft far more effective.
And individual leaders to people.
Yeah.
So you can do personal change in personal parts of your life. It doesn't always have to be professional. It's all aspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this has been a great webinar, and I think people will find a lot of information. So Mrs. Brand, do you have any final concluding remarks that you'd like to make?
I hope people go away inspired. They've got a brain. It's a fascinating organ, and we know so much more about it. I hope you access credible information to help you use yours and help others use theirs better.
Dr. Mukwa?
Yeah, I think we have here an opportunity of learning. There are a number of techniques there. Some of those cutting edge research have tremendous implication, and they are relevant for organizational leaders today.
And Mrs. Ricci?
When it comes to people, if you focus on the people, even your personal individual growth, the results will always follow. It's really basically always about that as far as project management, business management, leadership, and individual growth. All of it combined is really just always the basis of people. So the more information we get, the better off we are in developing our goals, setting goals, changing things, and doing everything. So yeah.
Thank you to each of you, and on behalf of PM Powered, I want to take this opportunity again to thank each of my panel members for their insightful comments and ideas. Please join us next month when PM Power brings you another webinar on a topic of interest to the business community. Make sure to go to www.pmpowered.com to see what PM Powered can do for your company. Thank you.